Well, hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Mary Partner Cast. I'm really excited. We've got a different topic that we don't normally hear at Mary or any real estate investor group anyway either. And that's co-living. And I first got introduced to co-living way back when I was just out of college and living in Kansas. I was paying rent of like $300, $400. And when I moved to Colorado for my first job, I was faced with a one-bedroom apartment in Rock costing $750, which was just astronomical for me then. It's astronomical for people now. And I found these brand new community that had apartments that were awesome. I didn't know anybody. They'd put me in a room and let me live with they would match me up with a roommate so I could afford this fabulous apartment and fabulous amenities. My downfall there was you had to go to the college to actually go there, but that's changing. So I am really excited to learn more about how it's changing in the industry now. And here at Mary, we have a member, Johnny Wolf, and his company is Homeroom. And that is his focus, is co-living. So Johnny, welcome to the Mary Partner Cast. And tell us a little bit about you and Homeroom.
Yeah, really happy to be there. And I love that story about co-living. It's not necessarily new. It's been around in different form factors for a long time. It's a really cool way to live. So my career started in the Silicon Valley. I worked there in finance for about 10 years and realized, hey, I can't really afford to buy a house in San Francisco anytime soon. So in 2015, I moved to Austin, Texas to invest in real estate relatively full time. From 2015 to 2018, I purchased a number of properties in Austin, and I did roommate housing for all of those properties. And the reason I did that is I actually just like living with roommates, and I like offering that opportunity to people that wanted that affordable option and create, community and connections. In 2018, I moved to Kansas City because I was looking for a more cash flow focused investment. Austin does not cash flow at all. And when I moved here, I did the same roommate strategy, but just realized like, hey, this way of finding roommates on Craigslist or Facebook, it's just very clunky, and it's not a way that I think in 5 years people will find roommates. So I created Homeroom, which is a co-living company. We're a bit unique. We're the only ones that offer co-living in the middle of America in terms of the Midwest, and we're growing fairly rapidly. We're up. Our leasing growth is up 300% this year versus last year to date. So things are going really well. There's a lot of demand for this type of housing, and we're really excited to kind of take it throughout the Midwest.
Well, I know my son lived out in California for a while, and he lived in LA, and so he had the choice of a one bedroom studio for $700-800, or for $700 or $800 he could get one room in a house with a whole bunch of other roommates, where he had a full kitchen and a living room and a parking space. So he really liked his co-living spaces out there so he could have more than just a bed and a bathroom.
Yeah,
So
no, 100%. I think it's affordable, so it's at the low end of the price point, but it's also that social connection that he gets more amenities, but he gets people that he kind of gets to meet right away. And that's what we
especially if
love
you're going
about
to a
it.
new city, that was my problem.
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah, and then
anybody. So
so
how do you find a roommate on, well, at that
yeah,
time, there wasn't even Craigslist. My only way to find a roommate was to ask around or post a classified in the newspaper. So
yeah, it's so much. I mean, like when you meet new roommates, they'll take you to parties, they introduce you to their social circle. They may have people over, so it makes your social life like so much different than if you just moved into a studio.
So who tends to rent in one of the co-living spaces, at least in your units?
Yeah, so our average age is about 27 currently. So it's young professionals. It's a mix of engineer types or people that are working um, you know other types of jobs, but we're open to all. We have people in their 60s in some of our houses. We have people in their like 21. 21's our minimum age. We do require them to be 21, but it's all age ranges. And we find what we do is to make that collaboration work of different ages is the roommate's going to do a video interview with each one of the other roommates before they join the house to make sure it's a good fit.
Okay. So you don't have the person that's going to be up all night playing music, living with the people that like to be quiet at night.
Exactly. And they can have each house has their own process, and we have a framework where we encourage them, like, hey, ask these questions, make sure it works for you. But each house does it differently. Some do a very long form hour interview with their potential roommates. Some do a quick 5-minute chat. We leave it open to them.
Okay. So what kind of property works best for a co-living space? Does it need to be a big house, a big apartment complex?
So we currently, and there are co-living operators that do apartments too. We're currently focused on single family houses and townhouses. So we generally are looking for something that's about 1,750 square feet or more. And we want 2 shared showers. We find having 2 showers is like an important thing, and people are all going to, not right now, but when people go to work, you don't want to have that log jam at the shower. So those are kind of important things, as well as parking. So we have unique things that we're looking for, but a house that's relatively on the bigger side is typically a better fit.
Okay. And do you offer amenities with the house? So like they're paying rent, but does that come with utilities and cable and internet all combined into one bill?
Yeah, so we talk about co-living as sort of like roommate housing with luxury apartment amenities, right? So if you've ever lived at one of those nicer apartments, the amenities are really cool. They have events, right? They have maybe a concierge that's available 24/7, and so that's sort of, and coffee and things like that. That's what our, most co-living companies and Homeroom as well offers, to our residents. So roommate matching is probably the biggest amenity, because that obviously is a huge challenge. But also we offer maid service, yard care, utilities, and the fastest internet that's available on that property. So you come in and you can like watch TV on day one. You can sit on the couch. You can cook. We also offer furnished common spaces. So that includes the living room and the dining room, as well as like kitchen essentials like pots, pans, forks, and knives.
We're not fighting over that this is my pot and that is my couch. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges for roommates is like, how do you divide and conquer to get furniture? How do you divide and conquer to get the things in the kitchen? What if someone moves out? Do you all pay them back? These are all dynamics that I've personally experienced while living in roommate houses. Someone was like, can everyone pay me $7 for the part of the TV stand I paid for? And that's just like a ridiculous situation. And so, we find really affordable ways for investors to essentially furnish the house for a few $1,000s, get it set up. And then the co-living environment is just so much better. We have people that are staying over a year. We've had some residents that have stayed over, since we started the company, we have some residents that have been with us for over 2.5 years.
Okay. So you kind of talked about how you pick the people. Do you have like a set standard questionnaire, and then the house decides how you're going to pick the people, or?
Yeah. So that's a really important question. That's like the most important part of our whole situation, is how do we get great roommates in there? Because when you have tenants can be of all shapes and sizes in an individual unit, but if they're going to live in a co-living space, they have to have a few other attributes, like just being friendly, being respectful. So we do a video interview to start with for all of our tenants. Then they do a credit and background and eviction check, just like any other property manager would do. Then we do the video interview with the roommates. And so one of our policies at Homeroom is, if you're in a house and and then a new candidate interviews with you and they say, hey, this isn't, we don't feel comfortable with that person moving in, then we say that's okay. Right. So once you're in a house, you never have to live with someone you feel uncomfortable or unsafe with. And then after that, they sign the lease and pay online. So it's 100% digital. We'll do a virtual tour in our initial call and tour the house via Matterport. So they can do, a lot of folks, they'll pay their deposit without ever getting inside of the house, which has been very good for the last 12 months.
So, and each individual person is signing their own individual lease. So it's not, we're all co-signers. We each have our own individual lease. And then the rent is paid through your app?
Correct. Yeah. So it's very similar to Airbnb in that respect, that we're sort of the middleman for the owner of the property, and we have kind of the legal arrangement with the tenant. So it shields the owner of the property from additional liability of roommates and all that. We have some very robust legal arrangements with the tenants, so they understand, like, when you're living with others, there's some additional risk. But yeah, that's how it's done. It's just they pay via the app. Everything can be done on our app.
Okay. I would think that this might be a good alternative to Airbnb, because sometimes people have their Airbnbs, but there's a lot more regulation around that in a lot of cities. Whereas putting roommates in a house. I know there's regulations around that in some cities. Do you ever run into that you can't have more than 2 unrelated parties in a house?
Yeah, so we're very aware of all those occupancy laws throughout every city we go into. We investigate that. We're in a couple HOAs and we've read all their documentation, called their HOA president, and then talked to the HOA manager. So we're very aware of all different regulations and rules. So we work really hard to make sure that there's not an aggressive body of some kind that will make our roommates move out, because that's not good for anyone.
But I would think this would pay higher than a standard rental, but maybe not as much as the Airbnb rental overall. Kind of
Yes.
like a ground.
Yeah, so we kind of see it as in between the two asset classes or ways of managing a single family. So there's a standard rental, maybe you can get $1,500 in rent from that property. With Airbnb, maybe you can get 3 times that much, but it's a lot of work. There's a lot of volatility there based on seasonality and pricing. With homeroom, we can almost double the rent of some rental properties. And so while you do have to furnish it, it's not like high-end furniture. We allow very affordable used furniture. And you don't have turnover, right? There's not as much traffic through your home. We typically have people in there. The average person joining our co-living spaces they're actually signing up for a year right out the gate.
And since you're offering maid service, they probably keep it fairly well maintained.
Yeah, we actually have a program called Maid Grades, where our cleaning service grades every house for their cleanliness every month. And if they fall below a C average, then we actually will kind of say, hey, if you don't bring this up, we're going to have to charge you for extra maid visits. Okay. So yeah, they keep it clean or we make them keep it clean. So
do you ever run into conflict that you have to go mediate between roommates?
Yeah, and so that's something that Homeroom's platform offers to all investors that join kind of our offering, is that we actually do the mediation. We do the roommate sourcing and the roommate issue mediation, kind of cultural management, engagement, making sure they're having a good time as well. And so we've had 2 roommate mediations in our 2.5-year history as a company that we have a licensed psychologist that she works sort of for us these 2 times at least, where we'll actually take them and they'll do an hour session with her. Both sides will talk. We have like a process for that. So it's surprisingly rare though. If people are vetted and the roommates get a chance to actually say, hey, I'd like to live with that person, we have very few issues with roommate dynamics.
Okay. And I've talked to you a little bit about this earlier, like way back early in the pandemic, but how are you seeing rents getting paid? I know a lot of people are struggling getting rents on their regular rentals. How's that working in the co-living?
Yeah, we were very fortunate. Part of it is that we're hyper affordable. It's like the cheapest option on the market. It's like mom and dad's house, the cheapest, obviously, but we're the next cheapest. We're like 30% cheaper than a studio. So people, even with like maybe a job break or any unemployment or anything, can continue to afford. So we actually only had 2 unpaid months of rent during the last 12 months. So we've been fortunate. We're also very, we vet very thoroughly. We actually work with Asusu. They do credit checks, or they actually offer microloans if people are having issues with payments. So between all of these strategies, we've had very close to 100% payment.
And those missed rents weren't the whole entire unit. That was just one person in that unit.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we love about the co-living model for investors. And it's different than Airbnb. It's better than Airbnb. It's better than primary single family rentals, is that we call it non-binary vacancy. That's similar to a multifamily, and that you may have, 5 rooms in the property and maybe 1 goes vacant. You're still collecting 4/5 of the rent. And most of the time that's actually going to be more than you'd be collecting if you're renting to a single family. So even if they don't pay you, you're still covering your mortgage. You don't have those big $0 months. And you don't have to pay, and then you don't have to pay a leasing specialist to lease up the property. So it's a much more stable. It's more stable than any option, and it has more upside than single family rentals.
And I know when I first talked to you, you were doing this more for your own. You were buying your own properties and managing your own properties, but now you are offering this as a service to other housing providers. So what do you do for them?
Yeah. So what we've sort of realized is, and so the way we started was we were just renting properties from owners and saying, hey, can we use your property? It's the Airbnb arbitrage model essentially for co-living. And then we transitioned to helping investors buy co-living properties. And none of these things were quite fast enough to add inventory. So because the demand for co-living is so high, we said, hey, let's open this up as a marketplace. So if an investor has a property, they can actually just come to us and it will be listed. We'll give them a guide like, hey, here's the best practices for setting your property up for co-living. And then it'll create a listing on our app where tenants can go book it. So it's very similar to the Airbnb marketplace concept. And we charge similar to what a platform would charge, but we're sourcing all your tenants. There's no leasing fees of any kind. In terms of the tenant relations and inbound messaging, we handle that 24/7. And so we've seen people that the rents go up 70%. And so their operating income goes up like 100% because it's that profit at the top end that really makes the difference.
And do you work in all markets, or is this only in Kansas City right now?
So we are in Kansas City, Dallas, and Austin. Those are our three. And we've launched the marketplace approach in all three of those cities. So we're doing in those three. We're looking at expanding to Phoenix in the second half of this year. So that'll be our fourth market.
Okay, that'll be good.
Yeah.
And so are you officially a property manager, or are you a platform, or are you something else?
We're a platform. We're more the marketplace in between. We operate essentially as a master tenant, shielding you from liability, similar to like what Airbnb does. And really, we've taken a lot of our pages for this approach out of their book because they've been doing it a long time and they're very good at it. And some of our advisors are kind of work with them. So
you're essentially leasing a property and then subleasing it on behalf of the public.
Yeah, basically that's the way the arrangement works. And legally, yep, correct.
Okay.
Yep,
I've seen that is one way to go rather than hiring a property manager. The property manager just leases the property and then they sublease it. So we actually talked about that at a Mary meeting probably in June or July last year. So interesting. Well, I know there's a lot of other questions that people probably ask a lot. Is there anything that I've missed on my questions that I should have asked you?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are asking like, what sort of maintenance issues do you have here? What kind of gotchas are there with this in terms of risk to my property? I think that's one of the things that people initially are like, they think roommate housing, they think, oh, it's going to become a party house. It's going to get crazy, which I've lived in roommate houses, I think like 18 of the last 20 years. And we have had social gatherings for sure, but we've never destroyed or hurt a property. Right. And so I think a lot of that is association with like college. It's 18 to 21. You are just getting used to drinking quite a bit kind of thing. With co-living, it's a different model altogether. And while we do have some master's students or seniors in college, we've actually never used up a roommate's full deposit ever in the history of our company, right? Which is, I think, incredibly rare. We've had over 400 roommates. So I think a lot of there's this association with like, I remember when I used to live with roommates and I was crazy, and that's not who I want. I don't want my former self in my property. What I think there is emerged over the last, like, let's say 10 or 15 years is this new era where people between 20 and 40 have like this tweener stage in life where they're young adults, but they also aren't married yet. And so there needs to be a new type of housing for them, but they're also like they're established professionals. They're very mature and they take very good care of our properties. And I think in a way they take better care because we have adults in every bedroom, like always kind of looking around. And so we hear about issues super fast, which may not be the case if you have one person in a 3-bedroom who never goes into 2 bedrooms. We have eyes on the ground all the time. And the other thing is when we have a roommate leave, we do a 200-point inspection of the property. So we're doing like 4 checks a year with a professional maintenance person. So we found that while it sounds, intuitively right off people's first reaction is like, that sounds like a lot of work. If you do it really well, it just like when you first heard about Airbnb, it sounded really scary and like everyone's house was going to get vandalized and everyone's TV was going to get stolen. We found that if you do co-living well, it's actually a very stable environment. Your property is taken care of impeccably. And so we're really happy to like kind of just break that fear, I guess.
I know there was a guru out there and he was teaching basically the co-living model, but he was teaching it for college housing. And he says, you
Mhm.
don't have that vandalism or the party house. He says, one, because you're offering them a nice place and they came to you because they wanted the nice place. And two,
Sure.
with that maid service um, and your rating, that if they were doing anything like that on a regular basis, you at least they'd either be cleaning it up themselves or your maid service would be telling you about it. So he says, yeah, he
Yeah.
had never really experienced the party house problem, even with college students, because his
Right.
college students were looking for a nicer place to live. And
Yeah.
people wanting nice places don't tear them up. So,
Yeah. I find like, just generally, and this is in real estate returns, um, there's fear around things that we naturally have biases against, maybe just because we haven't really experienced it. But a lot of times, the best returns or the best opportunities exist in those spaces where everyone else is afraid to go. And so I think that's where we really help our investors to like work through is like, this is a model that maybe on the surface is hard to swallow, but if you take the bold step and do it, the returns on your investment are going to beat everybody else's, and your property is going to be in better shape, and you're going to have like a beautiful professional Matterport when you sell it already set up, that staged, so you're going to exit really well. So we think about the whole life cycle of the investment, and that's what we do for everyone that joins our platform as well. Is like, do you want to sell this property as a co-living asset later down the life cycle? We really think that in the future, as co-living becomes an asset class similar to STR, that people will be able to sell these properties at a premium if they're already set up for co-living. So that's just something that we're looking forward to as we kind of build this community. And we're adding, we're growing leasing 300%. We're growing properties, 10% a month. So it's really exploding. And I think COVID was kind of lulled it a little bit, but I think what's going to come out of COVID is going to be even a bigger explosion in the co-living space.
do you ever have owners that are newer investors? Because the newer investor model is go buy a duplex, live in one side and rent out the other. I think this would be a good way for a newer investor to go buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house and get
Yep.
2 roommates to help him pay for or her pay for the property. Do you have owners that live in their co-living spaces?
That's a great question. And we love house hackers because that's how I started, right? I actually, when I moved to Austin, I house hacked all the properties I bought, and then I sold one, and that's how I started this company, right? I used the money from the property I couldn't have afforded any other way to start Homeroom. And so we actually have a Mary member who's one of our first platform members in Kansas City. He's actually remodeling his basement right now, and he's going to live in it, and he's going to have 3 rooms upstairs. So we're working with him on that process. So we're a huge fan of house hackers. We do try to work on that dynamic because I think it's more fun to live with equals versus the owner, maybe a little bit. So we have like actually a special like curriculum for them. It's like, hey, you don't have to even, you can just like be part of the roommate culture, right? And so that's an army of house hackers, like to build co-living units is something we actually talk about. And I think we're going to see a lot of house hackers who did the house hacking model. And then like me, after 3 years, are like, I'm kind of tired of finding roommates on Craigslist. This is a brutal model. But if I switch back to single family, I'm going to drop my rent by 50%. So that's where we want Homeroom to be able to help those people, right? So they'll still get 40% of it, the upside, and how they initially bought it was for that co-living space. And we can enable them to keep it like that for 30 years.
So how do we get in touch with you? How do we find you?
Yeah, so we have a couple options. Livehomeroom.com is our website. Dash Invest, it's at the top of our page. You can hit there. That's how you can buy a property with us, and we'll help partner to find the perfect co-living property. We also have a partner option, and it's called Dash Home Listing. And so that will help you join our platform, and where we'll coach you on setting up a co-living property that's free of charge. We have a full, like basically a step-by-step process. These are the things you need to get. And then we'll have you sign kind of like the legal agreement with us. Over time, that'll just be something in an app that you just have to check a box for terms of service. And then we'll put you on our platform and start driving tenants to your spot. So that's, and then you can reach me personally at johnny@livehomeroom.com.
So livehomeroom.com. Okay.
Yep.
Well, cool.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us today. I will I'm sure a lot of people will be reaching out to you with a lot of questions because this is totally, well, it's not totally new, but it's not a more common
Sure.
thing a lot of people see on the internet or see on a podcast somewhere. This is kind of a newer concept or a less known concept. So I'm sure you'll get a lot of people wanting more information. I'm just, my wheels are spinning. I'm like, we have a house that we're living in and we're like, should we sell it? Should we Airbnb it? But I think it would be an awesome co-living space. And we could probably make a really good return as a co-living space without having to deal with, the normal renter headaches of a rental house. So
right, yeah, and I mean, there's not all that 24/7 stuff. That's something our platform handles for you. You don't have to worry about, right? And then short-term rentals, that can be fun, but it's pretty grindy after a while, right? But co-living, it's like you get the house filled, and everyone's in there for a year, and then maybe one of them leaves, and we replace it. So yeah, we'd love to talk to you about your house, and we're happy to take any questions. We're really excited. We're kind of like co-living evangelists. Like you said, it's a little bit of a newer concept. And so we like to just say, hey, everyone can do this. We're happy to help anyone who's interested in trying it, because we think more people need better co-living options. So
cool. All right. Well, thank you. And I look forward to hearing more from you in the future. I'm going to have a co-living app on my phone someday.
I think everyone will, actually.
All right, cool. Well, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.